On this Thursday night, the warning bells about outbreaks in schools. Just days into a new term, students in Alberta sent home after cases are found in high schools.
Watching these outbreaks happen in the first week of school is definitely concerning.
Quebec unmasks its new penalties for people refusing to follow COVID-19 rules. Also tonight, is there more to We Charity shutting shop in Canada?
This was a group that was desperately looking for some form of bailout because of COVID. They just happened to know all the key ministers. They happened to have all their numbers.
And the destruction along America's west coast. The eerie skies as wildfires rage.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. It's the news parents and health officials feared. As more students return to class today, we're learning about more cases of COVID-19 at schools. In Alberta, the province is reporting outbreaks at 3 schools, and at least 21 schools in the province have each reported one positive case of COVID-19. Alberta's top doctor says no one should be surprised that a few cases have been linked to schools, given the numbers in the province have been climbing in recent days. In Manitoba, a student at a Winnipeg high school has tested positive. In BC, a province which saw a record spike today, thousands of students returned to class. The reopening pandemic plan involves different entry and exit points on school grounds, as well as varying lunch and recess times.
This is the new normal for all of us. So we're going to do our responsibility as parents as well.
They've adapted better than some of the adults, I think. You know, the kids understand what's going on. They understand social distancing.
Every parent has that first day of kindergarten pit in their stomach. I'm still not sure I made the right decision.
For countless parents, the decision whether or not to send their children back to class has weighed heavily on their minds for months. And as Jayme Doll reports, the news about COVID-19 cases in Alberta schools is only adding to that uneasiness.
The student body has only been back at this Calgary high school since Tuesday, and already a COVID-19 outbreak has been declared.
It's stressful and it's really, it's scary to see because some people, especially like right now at lunch, people don't keep their distance without masks and whatnot.
That's really, really nerve-wracking.
An outbreak means there are 2 or more cases in a school. As of Thursday afternoon, at least 3 outbreaks have been confirmed, 2 in Calgary and 1 in Lethbridge. Some students say it's almost impossible to physically distance.
What would have been a class of 35 is now 40 or 43, which is intense, especially when you have to try to spread out in the rooms that don't get bigger.
16 schools in the province have reported one positive case of COVID-19 where the infected person was in the building. Hundreds were sent home.
We are acting out of an abundance of caution by treating 2 cases who were in a school while infectious within a 14-day span as an outbreak, even when the cases are within one family. This is an extremely low threshold to meet.
The province of Alberta launched an online map so parents and students can see which schools have had 2 or more cases. None of the infected people got the virus from a school setting, but right now that is the biggest fear.
Individual cases appearing at a school, especially if they're caught or contracted in the community, not at all surprising. The key is to ensure that we don't lead to large spreading events within the school.
Contact tracing is being done, and anyone considered to be in close contact with positive cases is being asked to self-isolate. Alberta Health Services will not say if it's students or staff infected, but this parent, who is also a student advocate, says the government school mitigation plan falls short.
They have to recognize that classrooms are crowded, that physical distancing is a key strategy to mitigating the spread of COVID, and they have to fix the infrastructure of our system to accommodate for this change.
Cases have risen back up to numbers not seen in the province since May, only fueling the anxiety of parents as some now rethink the risk of sending their kids back to school. Jayme Doll, Global News, Calgary.
And Alberta saw a large surge in cases today. 113 more people tested positive in that province. BC reported 139 new cases today, a new daily record. There were 6 in Saskatchewan, 15 in Manitoba. In New Brunswick, there was 1 new infection. Ontario has 170 new cases, while Quebec has the most confirmed cases again today, with 188. And Quebec is cracking down on people who don't wear masks. Back in July, that province was the first to mandate masks in indoor public places. Now it's the first to hand out fines for people caught not respecting that mandate. Mike Armstrong explains.
Quebec's premier admits most are following the mask mandate. It's just a small minority that's left him frustrated.
Unfortunately, in a society, you always have few people that are irresponsible.
Cases like this one back in July have been few and far between. A customer to Tim Hortons refusing to wear a mask and then refusing to leave. He was arrested by police. Well, starting Saturday, Quebec is giving police officers another tool, the ability to ticket people not wearing masks inside in public spaces. How big the fines will be is still being worked out. That announcement will come Friday from the Justice Minister.
I think it's a terrific idea. And
Harry Schick has been hoping the government would take a tougher stance. After his bakery was shut down for 3.5 months, he's had enough to worry about just staying in business. He hasn't enjoyed having to argue with customers about masks.
We're not enforcement. We're just trying to get along and trying to make a living.
Now, there will be pushback from some. There have been several anti-mask protests. The Premier says more can take place. If they're outside, protesters won't be ticketed, but he is having trouble understanding the cause they're fighting for.
Some of these people, they even think that Elvis is alive.
All we're trying to do is protect all the communities. That's it.
The Ontario Premier is talking fines as well. Doug Ford says too many people are breaking the Federal Quarantine Act and not facing consequences. Since late March, anyone returning to Canada is supposed to self-isolate for 14 days. The only exception is essential workers. Well, Ford says in Ontario, police have found more than 600 people breaking quarantine, but federal authorities have only charged 17.
They should get a fine. You can't just say slap on the wrist, okay guys, don't worry about it, because if you do it again, we'll slap you on the wrist again. Doesn't make sense.
There is another announcement coming from Quebec. Karaoke bars started receiving notices Thursday. They're being ordered to shut down. This comes after one night of singing in a bar last month was found to be responsible for more than 80 cases of the coronavirus. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Now to the fallout from We Charity shutting down its Canadian operations. Investigations are underway into the controversy surrounding the organization's failed student grant program. But there are major questions about how those probes can carry on and exactly how We plans to restructure. Abigail Beeman is digging into that story.
We will be closing We Charity's operations in Canada.
In announcing the end in Canada, We Charity offered big numbers.
Youth who logged over 70 million volunteer hours, 30,000 small businesses run by women lifting their families out of poverty.
But there is still uncertainty from the charity the government claims was the only one capable of carrying out the Canada Student Service Grant Program. Over the next 6 to 12 months, the founding Kielburgers will sell off assets, including the Toronto headquarters, to fund an endowment to keep international projects going and put all resources online. But they have a lot of other entities. In a statement to Global News, We Charity says the American arm is not currently impacted, and the future of the for-profit social enterprise Me to We still hasn't been determined.
This was a group that was desperately looking for some form of bailout because of COVID, and they just happened to know all the key ministers. That's the question I'm focused on.
The opposition is pushing its investigation at parliamentary committees, paused by Parliament's prorogation.
This isn't about a witch hunt. This isn't about political gamesmanship. This is about reassuring Canadians that money that is spent in a pandemic, and we are going to spend enormous amounts of money to get people through this crisis, that money is being spent for the best interests of the Canadian people, full stop.
There's a lot of questions that still need to be answered. And just like proroguing Parliament doesn't shut down this investigation, closing up their Canadian shop doesn't relieve the We organization of their obligations to provide information to Parliament.
Are there lessons to be learned from that episode? Sure. But decisions by We are solely decisions by We. And I think we're going to continue doing what we have always said we were going to do, which is support Canadians through this.
Late this afternoon, We told Global News it would be happy to turn over those documents once there's a new committee. We also know the Ethics Commissioner is investigating the Prime Minister and former Finance Minister Bill Morneau. but no word yet from Justin Trudeau on the organization's decision to close in Canada. Abigail Beeman, Global News, Ottawa.
And today, another black mark for Bill Morneau. Canada's election watchdog says he broke the rules during the 2019 election. On the campaign trail, Morneau promoted 2 Liberal candidates in his official capacity as a cabinet minister. The election commissioner says that amounts to using public office for partisan gain. It violates a section of the Election Act that prohibits anyone but individuals from donating to political parties. Essentially, the government, which paid for the events, is not an individual. Morneau has agreed to pay a $300 fine and post a link to the ruling on his website and social media accounts. In British Columbia, a highly anticipated decision has been reached in a long-running legal battle over the role of private care in Canada's healthcare system. BC's Supreme Court has ruled against a Vancouver surgeon who argued that patients should have the right to pay for private care if they're left waiting too long for public care. Dr. Brian Day, who opened the Cambie Surgery Centre, launched the challenge, arguing BC's Medicare Protection Act puts limits on private care and violates the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Today, after a 3-year trial involving more than 100 witnesses, the court ruled the limits do not contravene the Charter. Turning now to the United States, where the devastation is growing from wildfires raging up and down the West Coast. In California, Oregon, and Washington state, crews are struggling to contain dozens of fires. The fierce winds aren't helping. So far, at least 15 people have died, including a toddler, and thousands of homes have been destroyed. Eric Sorensen reports on the growing toll from this destructive fire season and the efforts to get the situation under control.
There have been extraordinary escapes as swirling fires cut off routes to safety.
There was fire 360 degrees around me.
Rescuers have done heroic work, limiting the human toll, plucking campers trapped in the burning forest.
It was just this huge billowing cloud, and it was like a nuclear bomb that exploded.
But the destruction and misery is widespread and growing. In Phoenix, Oregon, the entire town wiped out. This senior's home reduced to ashes.
The center is burned with all of our things. Everything I own is there.
And the wildfires are moving quickly.
This will not be a one-time event. Unfortunately, it is the bellwether of the future.
Satellite images show smoke spreading over much of the Pacific coast. In San Francisco, streetlights on at midday. The look of the sky, apocalyptic.
It feels like the end of the world.
What's remarkable is the breadth of the fires burning up and down the U.S. West Coast. In Washington state, more than 130,000 hectares burned in one day. That's more than all of last year. In Oregon, a state that is normally damp and cool, 3 major fires are burning and a small town destroyed. And in California, several major fires are ablaze, some near San Francisco. Overall, more than 1 million hectares have burned, and there are still several weeks to go in this fire season. A record heat wave set the stage for the wildfires. Even the weather maps look ablaze.
Another 100 record highs are possible.
Drought and warm air dried the brush and trees, perfect fuel for wildfires.
They're higher intensity fires, which are difficult to impossible to extinguish. California has seen a quadrupling of area burns since the 70s, and this is largely due to climate change.
Seeing devastation almost every year now, Western governors are not among the climate deniers.
This is an extraordinary series of events we have suffered. They are the result of catastrophically dangerous climatic systems.
Climate advocates say all governments must look at what's happening with wildfires and act.
The longer governments take to respond, the more unpredictable things are going to be, and the more destruction I think we can anticipate having to manage in our daily lives.
This fire season has received less attention amid a pandemic and a cratering economy. But 2020's wildfires are, say scientists, historic, and there will be more of them in the future. Eric Sorensen, Global News.
A huge fire has broken out at Beirut's port, rattling nerves after last month's catastrophic blast. The military says it was sparked when cooking oil caught fire and spread to a tire warehouse. Crews are battling the blaze from the air and on the ground, but there are no concerns of an explosion, and no injuries have been reported. On August 4th, more than 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate exploded, killing nearly 200 people and injuring more than 6,000 others. A widespread cleanup is still underway. In Greece, help is on the way for thousands of migrants left without shelter after a fire destroyed their camp. Today, aid was handed out to the many who have lost everything. About 13,000 people had been living in squalor at the camp, which was meant for only 3,000 people. Greece is sending 3 ships to the island to provide shelter for some, as well as emergency tents. Germany and France say they'll take in about 400 minors whose parents aren't with them. The White House in damage control. Coming up, the damning revelations that President Trump purposely tried to mislead the American people about the pandemic. The White House is in damage control mode tonight over revelations the president deliberately misled Americans about the seriousness of COVID-19. Donald Trump insists he downplayed the threat to protect the public. But as Jackson Prosco explains, his actions are just one part of the failure by the U.S. to effectively fight the pandemic.
Why did you lie to the American people, and why should we trust what you have to say now?
Such a terrible question, and the phraseology, I didn't lie.
As President Donald Trump tries to manage a crisis of his own creation, he's left on the defensive over his failure to share key information about the severity of COVID-19.
I don't want to jump up and down and start screaming death, death, because that's not what it's about.
Trump now claims he did the American people a favor by downplaying the threat, even as he acknowledged to journalist Bob Woodward that the virus was far worse than the flu.
This is more deadly. This is 5 per, this is 5% versus 1% and less than 1%, so this is deadly stuff.
If Americans had been told that initially, Dr. Peter Hotez believes they would have taken the pandemic far more seriously.
As a consequence, the American public never really fully understood or appreciated the gravity of the COVID-19 epidemic until they started seeing family members and friends get sick or hospitalized.
Today, more than 190,000 Americans are dead. The U.S. economy is struggling, and there's still a debate, fueled by Trump, about preventative measures like face masks and restrictions on gatherings that could save even more lives.
It had the effect of turning this into what was one of the worst public health disasters in modern American history into something even bigger, which is a homeland security threat.
The question is whether voters will care. Michigan's governor gave a preview of the argument Democrats are likely to make.
They knew, they didn't tell us.
Trump isn't taking the bait, insisting he's better suited than anyone to lead during this once-in-a-generation crisis.
Expert or not, we're not doing any more shutdowns.
Trump is holding firm, even as his country records more cases and more deaths than any other nation on Earth. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
Still ahead, from stylish spy to Queen of Thorns, the career of the late Diana Rigg. The entertainment world is mourning a legend. British actress Dame Diana Rigg has died.
By the way, are you busy just now?
Not very. I've just written an article for the Science Weekly, but that's finished. Why?
Just interested.
In the 1960s, she played the elegant secret agent Emma Peel on The Avengers.
He loves me.
Instinctively.
Infuriatingly.
Intensely.
Rigg then went on to play a secret agent's wife in the James Bond film On Her Majesty's Secret Service. In that role, she was the only Bond girl 007 ever married. In 1994, the Queen made her a Dame Commander, the equivalent of Sir, for her service to the arts. For today's audience, she may be better known as another Dame.
There are always lessons in failures.
Yes. You must be very wise by now.
Rigg appeared in 18 episodes of Game of Thrones as the scathing matriarch Lady Olenna Tyrell. She stars in a period drama series slated to come out later this year and a thriller set for 2021. Her daughter says she was battling cancer for the past 6 months. Diana Rigg was 82 years old. The music world is mourning the talent behind this dance favorite. Celebration was one of the signature songs from Kool and the Gang. Ronald Bell, the singer, songwriter, and saxophone player at the heart of this funky music, has died. When Bell and his brother Robert Kool were growing up in Ohio, they couldn't afford drums, so they collected paint cans and taught themselves percussion by how much paint was left in each one. His other hit, Jungle Boogie, was part of a musical career that lasted more than 50 years. Ronald Bell was 68. Up next, Raptors fans take over Jurassic Park, and for good reason. The pandemic has made for a very different playoff experience this year. All games are happening in the NBA bubble, and fans are not allowed to attend, but people are still finding ways to celebrate safely. Horns were honking last night at the drive-in version of the Jurassic Park fan zone in Toronto. You can bet the lot will be filled again tomorrow night when the Raptors take on the Celtics in a must-win Game 7. The winner goes on to the Eastern Conference Final. And that is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Robin Gill. Tonight, your Canada is Lake Cowichan, BC. We would love to see your corner of this country, so send your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.